Rising tides. How global social movements are redefining justice today in an era defined by climate crises, systemic inequality, and political polarization. Social movements have become the heartbeat of global transformation. From street protests demanding environmental accountability to digital campaigns amplifying marginalized voices, collective action remains humanity's most powerful tool for change. These movements transcend borders, uniting individuals through shared goals while challenging entrenched power structures. Whether fighting for racial justice, gender equality, or economic fairness, activists today wield tools ranging from grassroots organizing to viral hashtags, a testament to the evolving nature of advocacy in the 21st century. The roots of resistance. Understanding social movements through history. Social movements are not new phenomena. They are deeply embedded in human history, often emerging in response to oppression, injustice, or societal shifts. Ancient civilizations saw early forms of organized resistance, such as the labor strikes of Roman slaves or the peasant revolts across medieval Europe. These struggles laid the groundwork for modern activism, proving that collective action has always been a catalyst for progress. However, the late 19th and early 20th centuries marked a turning point, as industrialization and colonialism intensified inequalities worldwide. Movements like the suffragette movement, civil rights marches in the United States, and anti-colonial uprisings in Africa reshaped societies. These efforts demonstrated how coordinated public pressure could dismantle systems of exploitation and redefine freedom. Early labor movements. Workers' unions in the 1800s fought for fair wages and safer conditions, setting precedents for future collective bargaining. Civil rights milestones. The U.S. Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a direct result of decades of protest, including sit-ins, boycotts, and marches led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr. The power of unity. Core principles driving contemporary movements. Today's social movements thrive on principles of inclusivity, solidarity, and strategic organization. Unlike isolated acts of defiance, effective movements create networks of support, leveraging diverse perspectives to amplify their impact. This unity fosters resilience against co-optation or suppression by authorities seeking to silence dissent. A central tenet of modern activism is intersectionality, the recognition that issues like race, class, gender, and sexuality intersect to shape individual experiences. By addressing overlapping oppressions, movements avoid siloed approaches and build coalitions capable of tackling complex problems holistically. Case study: Black Lives Matter and the rise of digital mobilization. Launched in 2013 following the acquittal of George Zimmerman in Trayvon Martin's killing, the Black Lives Matter (BLM) movement exemplifies how technology can galvanize mass participation. Social media platforms enabled real-time sharing of police brutality footage, transforming local tragedies into national conversations. Hashtags like #BlackLivesMatter became rallying cries, mobilizing millions globally. BLM's decentralized leadership model empowered communities rather than relying on top-down directives. Local chapters adapted tactics to their contexts, whether through peaceful demonstrations or legislative lobbying, showcasing the flexibility of contemporary activism. Yet, the movement also faced criticism for its lack of centralized coordination, highlighting ongoing debates about strategy versus autonomy. Challenges facing activists: navigating repression and division. Despite their transformative potential, social movements frequently encounter formidable obstacles. Governments may criminalize dissent, deploying legal measures or violent crackdowns to suppress protests. In authoritarian regimes, activists risk imprisonment, exile, or worse, simply for advocating change. Economic barriers further hinder participation, as marginalized groups often lack resources for sustained engagement. Additionally, internal divisions, whether ideological differences or disagreements over tactics, can fracture movements, weakening their effectiveness against unified opposition. Repression through legislation. Laws restricting assembly, speech, or funding for NGOs are increasingly weaponized against activists, particularly those targeting corporate interests. Funding gaps. Grassroots organizations often rely on donations, leaving them vulnerable during financial downturns or when donors prioritize mainstream causes over radical change. Strategies for success. Lessons from high-impact campaigns. Successful movements employ a mix of tactics, from nonviolent resistance to policy reform, to achieve tangible outcomes. Nonviolent protests, such as Gandhi's Salt March or the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, have historically proven more sustainable than confrontational methods. They attract broader public sympathy and reduce the likelihood of state retaliation. Simultaneously, building alliances with sympathetic institutions, like universities, churches, or international bodies, can lend legitimacy and resources to a cause. For instance, the global LGBTQ+ rights movement gained momentum through partnerships with celebrities, educators, and policymakers who amplified its message. Climate strikes. Youth-led revolutions against ecological collapse. Youth-led initiatives like Fridays for Future, founded by Swedish student Greta Thunberg, illustrate how generational passion can drive urgency. By occupying schoolyards and city streets, young activists forced governments to acknowledge the existential threat of climate change. Their actions spurred legislation in countries like Germany and New Zealand, demonstrating the power of intergenerational collaboration. Yet, these movements face skepticism from critics who dismiss youth activism as idealistic or disconnected from practical solutions. Addressing such critiques requires balancing emotional appeal with concrete proposals, such as transitioning to renewable energy or implementing carbon taxes. Tech is a double-edged sword. Amplification versus surveillance. Digital tools have revolutionized activism, enabling instant communication, fundraising, and awareness building. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok allow movements to bypass traditional media gatekeepers, reaching audiences unfiltered and unmediated. Viral videos exposing injustices can spark overnight global outrage, pressuring elites to act. Conversely, the same technologies enable surveillance, censorship, and disinformation. Authoritarian states monitor online activity to identify dissidents, while misinformation campaigns can distort narratives and sow confusion among supporters. Activists must therefore navigate the dual reality of empowerment and vulnerability in cyberspace. Encryption tools. Secure messaging apps like Signal protect organizers from being tracked by repressive regimes or corporations. Bots and algorithms. Automated accounts can spread propaganda or drown out legitimate voices, requiring activists to adapt their strategies constantly. The invisible frontlines. Undervalued movements fighting for survival beneath the headlines of high-profile campaigns, like countless lesser-known movements working tirelessly for survival. Indigenous communities defending ancestral lands from deforestation, migrant workers resisting exploitation, and disabled advocates pushing for accessibility reforms, all operate in spaces often ignored by mainstream discourse. These movements face disproportionate risks due to their marginalization. Resources are scarce, visibility limited, and media coverage minimal. Nevertheless, their persistence underscores the breadth of struggles shaping our world, reminding us that justice is not a singular fight but a mosaic of interconnected battles. Land back. Reclaiming sovereignty in the age of environmental exploitation. Movements like Land Back advocate for indigenous sovereignty over territories stolen through colonization. By rejecting extractive industries and promoting ecological stewardship, these groups challenge capitalist models that prioritize profit over people and planet. Their work intersects with climate activism, offering alternative frameworks for sustainability rooted in tradition. Success stories include the Standing Rock Sioux tribe's resistance to the Dakota Access Pipeline, which drew international attention and temporarily halted construction. While the pipeline eventually opened, the movement inspired similar fights globally, proving that even partial victories can ignite widespread inspiration. Building bridges. The importance of coalition building. No single movement exists in isolation. Lasting change demands cross-movement collaboration, linking issues of race, environment, economics, and health. When climate activists ally with labor unions, for example, they address both job displacement caused by green transitions and the urgent need to decarbonize economies. Coalition building requires humility, listening, and recognizing that different groups may have conflicting priorities. However, finding common ground, such as opposing privatization of essential services or protecting community rights, creates fertile soil for united action. Intersectional partnerships, feminist movements collaborating with environmentalists to combat toxic waste disproportionately affecting women and children. Policy synergy, combining immigrant rights campaigns with anti-racism efforts to tackle xenophobia and systemic exclusion simultaneously. Hope amid adversity, stories of resilience and progress amid the challenges. Numerous movements have achieved remarkable successes. South Africa's post-apartheid transition, India's campaign to end caste discrimination, and Argentina's feminist uprising that toppled President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner demonstrate the enduring power of collective struggle. Even incremental wins matter profoundly. The legalization of marriage equality in many nations, the expansion of voting rights protections, or the increased representation of women in politics all stem from sustained grassroots effort. These victories remind us that perseverance yields results, however small they may seem. Women's March, a global phenomenon born of shared anger. The Women's March of 2017, held days after Donald Trump's inauguration, became the largest single-day protest in U.S. history. Millions marched globally to demand reproductive rights, gender equity, and an end to misogyny. Its success proved that anger, when channeled constructively, can unify vast numbers behind a common purpose. While subsequent years saw fluctuations in momentum, the march's legacy persists. It sparked a surge in female political candidacy, influenced policy debates, and normalized open discussions about sexism and harassment. As a blueprint for inclusive activism, it remains a touchstone for organizers worldwide. The path forward, sustaining momentum in a fractured world. To sustain progress, movements must remain adaptable, innovative, and grounded in empathy. Long-term visions should balance immediate demands with structural reforms, ensuring that temporary fixes do not overshadow deeper systemic changes. Education, storytelling, and cultural shifts are equally vital in reshaping mindsets alongside policies. Activists must also guard against burnout, prioritizing self-care and community support. Burnt-out leaders cannot lead effectively, nor can movements survive without nurturing their members' well-being. Creating safe spaces for reflection, rest, and rejuvenation ensures longevity in the fight for justice. Conclusion: social movements are the lifeblood of democracy, the force that turns passive citizens into active agents of change. They remind us that power does not belong solely to rulers or corporations. It resides in the hands of those willing to organize, resist, and envision a better world. If you believe in justice, join a movement. Support local causes, share knowledge, and use your voice, not just in moments of crisis, but daily. Together, we can turn rising tides into waves of irreversible transformation.